I had no plans to make this a dedicated video, but my god, there are $100 gaming PCs out there for the taking. On a random Wednesday a few weeks ago, 2 of my employees were able to snipe 2 of these $100 or less gaming PCs, and they did not disappoint. A week later, I wanted to make sure that that wasn't a fluke, so I sent a third person out to find one, and now we have 3. I know this is gonna vary depending on where you live around the world, but I think we accidentally just found the new meta for sniping budget PC hardware even during these rough times of Ramageddon and all the shortages. All 3 of these builds are drastically different levels of performance too, but they're all capable in 2026, so I wanna spread the knowledge that we just learned. I got some good nuggets in here if you don't wanna break the bank. And real quickly, if you're new around here, my name is Zach, and helping you build or just score budget gaming PCs is what I'm all about. I upload custom build guide videos, sometimes work on different projects like we are today, and I have a ton of totally free PC building resources on my website. If you want to skip all of that, then we also sell pre-builds, but they're quite a bit more expensive than the builds we're looking at today. I just want to help you no matter which route you take, and if you're on a seriously tight budget, then PC gaming might still be possible if you watch this video. So let's jump in. Now I'm gonna level with you, this is not going to be easy. In the process of scoring 3 gaming PCs for $100 or less, we had a car breakdown, multi-hour long road trips, and several hours of researching. More than likely, there is not gonna be a super cheap gaming PC on Facebook Marketplace within 5 minutes of your house the first time you open up the app. This requires real work, speed, and dedication if you wanna make this happen. But if you don't wanna spend a lot of money, this is how you do it. In fact, one of the only easy things in this process was the cleaning of the builds, and that's because we had today's video sponsor Fanttik and their B10 Pro Max Air Duster. I'm gonna be fully transparent with you guys per usual. Way before we agreed to make this a sponsored video with Fanttik, we already ran to grab our B10 Pro Maxes when these PCs got back to the office. Instead of using that nasty canned air, which can be expensive over time and possibly leak fluid and destroy your circuit boards, electric air dusters like this are definitely the way to go. This comes with 4 different nozzles for all sorts of projects, has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery that you can even use to charge your devices, and there's a built-in LED light for dusting in the darker corners. The link's in the description if you're interested. Now, before we start talking about the different tips and tricks to score budget hardware, I want to actually show you what we got. The CPU and GPU combinations, RAM configs, and even storage are all different inside these builds, and honestly, some of this is super surprising. Coming back with fully capable $100 gaming PCs wasn't even the original goal of this project. On a random Wednesday here at ZTT, things were a little slow around the office, so I tasked 2 of my employees with spending the next few hours to find the best $100 deal that they could find on anything PC hardware related. I even made a YouTube short all about this. I had no expectation of what the deal would be. I figured that they would just come back with a single component, like maybe a RAM kit or maybe a budget GPU. Both of them arrived with 2 fully functioning gaming PCs.
Bro, it's gotta be a wrap. This is gonna be a good video.
Sam's arrived first, and I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling I had when I saw him walk into the office carrying a full desktop. Now, this thing was super dirty, as you would imagine, and even before we agreed to the sponsored video with Fanttik, we already ran to grab the B10 Pro Max Duster, like I said earlier, just so we could see what was inside of it. Underneath all that dust, which was thankfully easy to remove, there was an Intel Core i5 4570K paired with a GTX 760. These specs are nothing to write home about, but back in the day, this was a very common mid-ranged pairing that could play games in 1080p. We'll see later in the benchmarking section, but I gotta imagine that this is still capable of playing the easier to run titles. There's also 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM clocked at 1333 megahertz. That's a Corsair CX750 power supply. Everything's inside a Zalman Z11 case, which I honestly think looks really cool even in 2026, but the storage department is definitely its weakest point. It only has a 300 gigabyte HDD in there, so no solid state storage whatsoever. And Sam actually had to haggle his way to just getting any sort of storage at all. Apparently this PC was listed at $150, but it said it had 12 gigabytes of RAM. When he found out it only had 8, he got the price knocked down to $100 and even had the 300 gig HDD thrown in there for free. If you're hunting for a full gaming PC under $100, then some sort of haggling is probably gonna have to happen at some point. Again, I don't think you're gonna find many people selling a fully custom build like this straight up for $100. You'll have to get a little bit creative at some point. He actually got the price down to $99.95, not exactly $100, so when he arrived back here to the HQ, he gave me my change back of just a nickel, which I obviously didn't want. Thankfully, he found Jeff that just so happened to be selling SATA data cables here at the office for 5 cents, which Sam ironically needed. So yeah, the build turned out to cost exactly $100 right on the dot. The specs aren't super impressive, but I mean, here's Counter-Strike 2 getting above 60 FPS in 1080p, Fortnite's at 99 FPS, this PC can still play. I'm gonna explain how and where he got that PC, but before we do that, let's quickly recap what's in everyone else's build just so you know what they picked up. I was honestly super impressed by Sam's build because again, I was not expecting to see a fully functioning PC arrive back with him. But once I saw Aiden's PC, my perspective kind of changed a little bit. For some reason, Aiden was thinking the same thing and he didn't want to come back to the office with just one component. He wanted to find a fully functioning system and it cost him a road trip and pretty much his entire day traveling from Houston to Austin, but I think it was worth it. This here is a much more updated Ryzen 5 2600 paired with a GTX 1660 Super. Brother, the 1660 Super by itself would have been a good deal for $100. This PC is absolutely insane. He also got just 8 gigs of RAM, but this time it's obviously DDR4, only clocked at 2400 megahertz, but at this price, I don't really care. The kicker is that when Aiden returned to the office, he gave me $40 in change back. This modern gaming PC only cost him 60 bucks. Now, naturally, after hearing about his multi-hour road trip to Austin and back, I let him keep the $40 for gas money, but $60 for this entire build? Absolutely nuts. Aiden ended up using a completely different strategy to secure his build compared to Sam. Again, I'll explain that in just a minute, but let's finally recap with what's in Nick's build next. Nick got involved in this project a little bit later because after I saw what Sam and Aiden were able to come up with, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a fluke and that $100 gaming PCs were actually possible. He used a third method of scoring this build, and performance-wise, this one's about in the middle. This here's a Core i5 6500, 8 gigs of DDR4, actually clocked at 3200 megahertz, and that's an 8 gig RX 580. Honestly, the RAM and GPU are super impressive. It's only the 11-year-old 6500 CPU that made this build not instantly take the crown. He did put a ton of work to get all these parts though, which I'll explain soon. So now that we know what's inside everyone's build, the important part about this video is explaining how they scored these crazy deals. Everyone used a completely different method, which is why I want to make this video. Like I said earlier, Sam and Aiden only had a few hours to make this happen, and Sam actually took probably the quickest way of scoring a complete build. He originally tried to hunt some local listings for some sort of office PC that he could get for cheap and then slap a low-profile GPU in there. Unfortunately, everything he saw initially was way overpriced, as you would expect in 2026, so he set his eyes on pawn shops and e-waste facilities. Lots of those types of places are somewhat private though, where they accept old hardware from anywhere, but then they only post it online and that can take a while to get a hold of them and set up a transaction. So he found a public-facing place called EPO Houston where he could physically enter the store and see what they had. Like I said earlier, they had this PC sitting on the shelf for $150. Thankfully, they let him test out the PC in the store. That's when he realized that the RAM was mislabeled, and that gave him the cover he needed to lowball at $100, which they accepted. I think visiting a pawn shop or an e-waste facility is a good strategy to start with, but the chances that that strategy pays off are pretty low. There's tons of people out there that hawk those places day and night, and the chances are pretty low that you'll find something that those type of people missed. But again, it's probably worth at least giving it a shot. Aiden, on the other hand, went down another route.
So I went on Facebook Marketplace. I feel kind of bad because it's kind of boring what I'm doing. My idea was just, hey, let's get a PC that's already built and then see if we can make any upgrades. So I'm driving out to Austin, Texas right now. It's a $60 desktop. I have no idea what the specs are. I have no clue if it turns on. I think I asked those questions and the guy pretty much, that's all I got from him.
The original listing was for 2 Xbox Ones, some gaming peripherals, little doodads, and most importantly, this PC. What he also discovered is that the guy that was selling it was probably on the more wealthy end of things, and he was honestly just trying to get rid of his older stuff as soon as possible.
Just picked up the PC. Bro, it's gotta be a rat. I still got 40 bucks left. I can pocket it because I'm gonna need some gas money. All right, Zach's gonna be mad because I'm gonna be like 30 minutes to an hour late, but oh well.
I'm sure he would have sold that entire bundle for a price way less than what it was actually worth, but thankfully he was willing to part ways with just the PC and gave Aiden a deal of a lifetime. I'm telling you, rich people value their time and convenience probably more than you would think. That guy probably thought that Aiden got the worst end of the deal. By just showing up with the cash and making the process easy, you're providing value to people like that, so these chances can sometimes result in a big score.
Holy, I won, bro. I just won.
I'm sure what also helped Aiden land the deal is that this rich guy didn't want to deal with this big hunk of dust, probably because he didn't have an electronic air duster. One thing I haven't showed you is that you can select different levels of power with the buttons on the back of the B10 Pro Max. For a build like this, we definitely had to crank that thing up. Now finally, Nick, on the other hand, had a slightly unfair advantage because he didn't have 4 hours to make this happen like Aiden and Sam did. I gave him an entire week to see what he could come up with. He had quite a journey too, which he actually documented, so I'll let his clips do most of the work.
So Zach has given me 10 days to use $100 to get a fully functioning gaming computer, a desktop gaming capable computer for $100. I've been basically lowballing people on Facebook Marketplace like all day. And I think I'm starting to make ZTT look bad because it's in my bio on Facebook. So I'm switching up the strategy, and I am going to go for a part out or a moving sale. And I'm going to try and build something or flip something since I have 10 days. I decided I'm going to try out this PC for $40. I don't think it's a bad deal. Untested, super dusty, probably means that he knows it's broken. $40, even if just the graphics card or the CPU and RAM are working, it's a good deal. And I got 10 days to figure out how to complete the rest of the computer. We'll see how it goes, man. I'm excited. First time on a bank in Houston, break a crisp Benjamin, and see how it goes.
A few moments later.
All right. Well, oh, my bad, twin. It's later. My brakes failed on the way to pick it up, and then I almost hit like 3 cars. So I had my hazards on. I was going like 7 miles per hour. I'm probably an hour away from my apartment, but we're about to call AAA. So sick, you know?
He actually noted and screenshotted a couple of actually solid $100 to $150 deals that were ripe for the taking. Some of them sold before you could get to them, some of them took forever to respond. This is the type of hassle you'll have to deal with when buying locally, but the reward has the potential to be huge. Once he finally made it to the meetup with the seller after his car broke down, he ended up buying the PC for only $40. The seller confirmed that this was not in perfect condition. He had some issues with the CPU cooler, but that's to be expected with a $40 build. After he cleaned the PC all up with the air duster, he quickly realized that the CPU cooler was simply just not installed correctly and the PWM fan cable just wasn't plugged in. Some of the other case fans were plugged into the wrong headers or just not plugged in at all, but he did have a boot problem when he first fired it up. Apparently he was getting no display, even though everything else in the PC seemed to be working properly, so he unplugged the graphics card, which was a GTX 1050 Ti, plugged it into the integrated graphics on the motherboard, and then he got the PC to boot. The 1050 Ti ended up being faulty, but when you're paying just $40 for an entire desktop, again, something like that is bound to happen. Thankfully, he had a $100 budget, so he obviously had some more money to play with. He found a listing for an RX 480 that wasn't far away from the office for only $50. Naturally, he haggled it down to $45, but when he plugged this one in, he got a happy surprise. He actually got reverse scammed because this wasn't just an RX 480, it was an RX 580 that was misidentified. This wasn't like a BIOS flash or anything like that. The seller just didn't know what they were holding on to, so he ended up scoring an 8GB RX 580 for just $45. The one thing he was missing now though was storage, because the original $40 gaming PC didn't have any sort of storage at all. Back to Facebook Marketplace he went, and he actually stumbled on a 256GB SATA SSD listed for only $18. Obviously this can't hold your entire Steam library, but he was working on a tight budget, and his $15 counter offer was enough to seal the deal.
Some part of me feels like I just switched teams. I did pick up the SSD. I did not realize I was coming to actual Ironside. This is hilarious, man. It's where I got my first pre-built when I was like 14. It's a whole story for that, but that's crazy. These are probably just returned parts that they can't use anymore, so they just list them on Marketplace. I'm on my way back now, 2.5 hours, but I get to watch COD Champ. Can't be too mad. Let's go.
After he got the SSD installed and dealt with some annoyances of trying to get Windows 11 installed on this older hardware, everything booted up and he successfully put together this entire semi-custom build for exactly $100. The important thing to note is that Nick's experience was probably the most realistic scenario that you would end up going through. You'll probably have more than 4 hours to find a good deal. Even though Nick spent every last dollar of his $100 budget, he wasn't done though, and this is exactly why he's our operations manager. He actually then listed the broken GPU that was originally in the $40 build, along with the Wi-Fi card that he didn't need, and he ended up selling that combo for 30 bucks. He was fully transparent about selling a broken GPU, but some repair guy probably thought they could bring it back to life, so he made the sale. That drops his total build price down to $70. Incredible. A journey like that though is exactly what I would expect if you set out on a $100 gaming PC mission today. Sam and Aiden were extremely limited with just a few hours for the original project, but with more time you can get way more creative like Nick did. You might have to buy a PC with 1 or 2 broken parts, fix up the PC because the buyer thinks it's broken even though it's probably not a huge issue, then you'll buy some replacement parts, possibly sell some of the extra components you don't need, and at the end of the day the bill comes out to $100 or less. This is exactly why I said at the beginning of the video that this was not going to be easy, but if you want a fully capable and honestly somewhat impressive PC for under $100, this is how you do it. The FPS per dollar value in all 3 of these builds is honestly through the roof just because they're less than $100 gaming PCs, but big picture wise, this might highlight how to score budget RAM or even SSDs in 2026. Even if that's the last component or 2 that you need, I think it's safe to say that most people know the situation about pricing at this point, even the casuals. I highly doubt that you'll find single kits of RAM on good deals anymore, but you might find a rich guy or a pawn shop that's completely oblivious to the situation, and they're just trying to get rid of a huge desktop that's taking up space and collecting a lot of dust. If you took just the GPU out of Aiden's $60 build, that would still have been incredible value, even though you'll use nothing else. Same thing for Nick's 8GB RX 580. There's really good value in here, but that's not how the sellers were looking at it. Think about a business owner trying to clear their shelves, a rich guy trying to offload his random older purchases, or maybe a soccer mom cleaning out the house. You're providing them value by just buying the whole thing. Now would not be the time to send them a lengthy message trying to persuade them that you just want the RAM or just want the SSD so you can save some money. My recommendation is to offer to take the whole thing off their hands, and here is where speed can also be an advantage. If they're just trying to get rid of it, you saying that you can arrive right away with cash is the value that they're looking for. Those type of people might not care that they could get more money if they took a component out and sold it by itself. They just want the entire hunk of junk gone. We can help them. Now, one other thing I need to mention before you start looking all over the place for used desktop PCs is the reminder and disclaimer that you need to be careful. Obviously, we don't want to be scammed, so buy on a platform that can protect the buyer in some way or another. This is really difficult to enforce on local sales, so you have to use your best judgment. But more importantly, you also need to keep yourself safe during these exchanges. There are a lot of terrible people out there, and even someone here at the office had their life in jeopardy at one point when selling a gaming PC. I'm not going to dive into those details in this video, but just know that they had a weapon pointed at them, obvious emotional suffering, and months worth of court cases and legal issues trying to resolve it. If you're a kid, don't even think about doing this without a parent or an adult that you trust. But even as adults, protect yourself in one way or another, and at the very least, at least have a dog with you. Whenever you meet up with someone to buy a $100 or $200 gaming PC, if you pay with cash, you're basically guaranteeing that you have that amount of cash on your person, which is a little risky. Always use your best judgment, be safe, and never put your life in jeopardy for PC hardware. Now, one more thing I want to recap real quickly is the actual benchmarks, because honestly, even I'm dying to see how these PCs compare against each other side by side. This whole project was never meant to be a competition, just for the record. Again, I thought that they were going to come back with like one component, but I mean, we might as well see which one performs the best. Unfortunately, we can't run a lot of games, at least not with all the PCs. Sam's 4570K and GTX 760 couldn't even run some of the titles that we tested. Apex Legends, Hogwarts Legacy, Rust, Cyberpunk, Marvel Rivals, and Helldivers 2 had no chance of even getting the benchmark complete. The GTX 760 doesn't really support DirectX 12 games apparently, so a lot of the new stuff just wouldn't even launch. We also had an issue, which you were probably expecting. They're basically all bottlenecked by 8 gigs of RAM. All 3 three PCs only have 8 gigs of DDR3 or DDR4, and for Nick and Aiden's build, they were also running in single channel. Windows by itself basically needs all of that, so the games can't even properly utilize the full potential of their CPUs and GPUs because they were being held back by the RAM. Now, PCs like Aiden only need a quick RAM upgrade, and then it's a much more powerful and capable build, but for right now, we're testing them how we bought them. We'll start with Counter-Strike 2, and here's Sam's PC with the 4570K and GTX 760, and actually got 68 FPS in 1080p Pro settings. Aiden's PC with the 1660 Super got 80 FPS, and then Nick's build with the RX 580 got 69 FPS. I'm starting with this one because this is a great example of the RAM being the bottleneck. Aiden and especially Nick's build should be getting way higher FPS, but they're being held back by the 8 gigs of RAM. Next up, we have Fortnite, and here are some even more weird results. Sam's build got a solid 99 FPS using 1080p performance mode and 50% resolution scale. The game doesn't look pretty, but 99 FPS with an e-waste 10-plus-year-old PC isn't all that bad. Aiden's 1660 Super build did pretty solid at an 80% resolution scale, getting 110 FPS, but then Nick's PC really struggled on this one in the same resolution scale, but dropping down to 64 FPS. The Ryzen 5 2600 in Aiden's PC makes a huge difference compared to the decade-old Intel i5 6500, but regardless, I'm pleasantly surprised that all three PCs managed to get above 60 in Fortnite. And finally, let's check out GTA 5, since that's all us PC builders will be able to play for a while we wait for GTA 6 to come over to our side. Sam's GTX 760 actually cranked out 68 FPS in 1080p normal, which didn't look all that bad. Aiden's PC only did a touch above that at 70 FPS, and the Nick's PC got the worst performance with 50. Here's an example where sometimes games are optimized to use different features of a CPU. Sometimes they'll leverage the speed and horsepower of a single core, and other times they'll leverage multi-core performance. Every game is a bit different. On paper, I would have guessed that Nick's RX 580 build crushes Sam's GTX 760, but because of game optimizations, RAM bottlenecks, super old CPUs, and probably some other factors I'm not even considering, these results are just going to be all over the place. The main concept I want to drive home though is if you start looking for a super budget build, you're not going to find ones with these exact specs. It's the strategies that we talked about that can help make it happen. Whenever you're hunting for this cheap of PC builds, it's not up to you what components you'll get, and honestly, I wouldn't even strive for anything in particular. This is all about hunting for value, and even if you grab a PC like one of these that have an insane bottleneck, you might not be a lot of money away from turning it into a very capable and balanced build. You could find another 8 gig stick of DDR4 RAM on eBay for around 20 to 30 bucks, throw that in a build like Aiden's PC, and that's more than capable for 1080p gaming in 2026. A $100 gaming PC doesn't have to be perfect right now, it most likely won't be, but it could be the foundation of a build that you can evolve over the next few years. And remember that if it's dusty, which it probably will be at this price range, be sure to pick yourself up a Fanttik B10 Pro Max Air Duster, and big thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. The link's down in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, another way to go about super budget builds is to convert Office OEM PCs into gaming PCs. My latest example on how to do that is up on the screen right now.